Imagine knowing with absolute certainty that in exactly 24 hours everything you know will be annihilated, not through slow decline, not through gradual change, but through sudden, violent, total extinction. That was the reality for the dinosaurs on the day a 6-mile-wide asteroid traveling at 45,000 miles per hour slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. The impact released energy equivalent to 10 billion atomic bombs, instantly vaporizing everything within hundreds of miles and triggering a cascade of catastrophes that would extinguish 75% of all life on Earth within days. What makes this extinction event psychologically devastating to comprehend isn't just the scale of death, but the speed. Creatures that had dominated Earth for 165 million years were annihilated in less time than it takes for a day to pass. There was no warning, no adaptation, no escape. One moment, the planet teemed with apex predators and massive herbivores in ecosystems that had evolved over geological timescales. The next moment, everything was burning. At the moment the asteroid struck Earth at the Chicxulub crater site, everything within hundreds of miles simply ceased to exist. The impact created temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun, instantly vaporizing the asteroid itself. The rocket struck and every living thing in the immediate blast zone. There was no time for fear, no moment of realization. They were transformed from living organisms to plasma in a fraction of a second, atomized so completely that no trace of their final moments remained. The asteroid punched through Earth's crust and into the mantle, creating a crater over 100 miles wide and 12 miles deep. The force created a temporary mountain at the crater's center taller than Everest that existed for mere minutes before collapsing. The ground rippled like liquid, creating earthquakes measuring over magnitude 10 that propagated across the entire planet. The impact ejected billions of tons of vaporized rock and debris into the atmosphere. Much of it would rain back down as molten droplets, turning the entire sky into a ceiling of fire. The blast wave traveled outward at supersonic speeds, flattening forests and killing everything in its path for thousands of miles. The sound was beyond comprehension, estimated at 300 decibels, loud enough to kill from pressure alone. Any creature within hearing range experienced primal fear as an approaching wall of noise that signaled incoming destruction beyond any evolved threat response. Seismic energy triggered volcanic eruptions across the planet, particularly in already active regions. These eruptions pumped additional particulates and gases into an already devastated atmosphere. For creatures living near these volcanoes, the experience was multiple apocalypses simultaneously. Ground shaking, sky darkening, air becoming toxic, heat increasing, all overlapping into sensory overload that their brains had no framework to process. The ejected material that had been thrown into space began raining back down as molten rock droplets, heating the atmosphere to hundreds of degrees. The sky became a radiant ceiling of heat, turning the planet into a global oven. Creatures that survived the blast, the earthquakes, the tsunamis, now faced atmospheric temperatures that made survival impossible. There was nowhere to hide from falling sky, no burrow deep enough to escape the heat. The heat pulse from raining debris lasted for hours, maintaining temperatures that spontaneously ignited vegetation across entire continents. Forests that had stood for millions of years burst into flame simultaneously, creating firestorms that consumed oxygen on a planetary scale. The smoke from global fires combined with dust and debris already choking the atmosphere, creating a darkness that would last for months. Photosynthesis became impossible. The food chain began collapsing from the bottom up as plants died. The tsunamis generated by the impact took hours to reach distant coastlines, creating walls of water hundreds of feet high that scoured continents. Coastal ecosystems were obliterated. The psychological experience for creatures that could perceive them coming was the terror of inevitable death, of watching destruction approach with no possibility of outrunning it. As the first day ended, the immediate violence gave way to longer catastrophe. The atmosphere was choked with debris that would remain suspended for months, blocking sunlight and dropping global temperatures rapidly. The psychological shift for surviving creatures was from fear of immediate death to disorientation of a transformed world. Day and night lost meaning in perpetual darkness. Temperature dropped below freezing in regions that had been tropical. Acid rain began, water vapor combining with vaporized sulfur from the impact to create sulfuric acid that fell globally, poisoning water sources and further devastating plant life. The psychological experience of thirst combined with impossibility of finding uncontaminated water created desperate behavior as survival instincts drove creatures to drink from poisoned sources. For the large dinosaurs, their size became a liability. Enormous caloric requirements became impossible to meet as food chains collapsed. The psychological experience was hunger beyond anything in their evolutionary history. The slow recognition that food was gone and not returning. The metabolic desperation as bodies began consuming themselves. Large predators became scavengers, became starving husks, their dominance meaningless in a world without prey. In the weeks following the impact, the extinction became total and irreversible for most species. The darkness persisted. The cold intensified, and ecological collapse reached completion. The creatures that survived were small, able to burrow, able to survive on detritus and carrion, able to enter dormant states or had low metabolic requirements. The dinosaurs that survived the impact, the fires, the tsunamis, the initial starvation, eventually succumbed to compounding failures of ecosystem collapse. The psychological experience for the last dinosaurs was isolation, the disappearance of their own kind, the absence of sounds and sights that had filled their sensory world, the lonely recognition that they were ending. The final dinosaur to die experienced something no member of its species had ever faced, being completely, finally alone. The day the dinosaurs died reveals the randomness of extinction, the irrelevance of dominance to survival in catastrophic conditions, and the speed with which millions of years of evolution can be erased by cosmic accident.